everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, travel into terror, and plunge into peril. If you've ever been mortally afraid of being eaten by a piano, just like that one mansion level in Super Mario 64, you're in the right place. I'm Justin, but you can call me Joker.
I'm Nico, and I'm a talking cat.
Meow, my God.
Meow. Well, I'm Dan, and I'm tall.
Oh, and we are here today to review House from 1977, otherwise known as Hausu. This movie was directed by Nobuhiko Obayashi, starring Kimiko Ikegami as Gorgeous, Kumiko Oba as Fantasy, Eriko Tanaka as Melody, Miki Jinbo as Kung Fu, Mieko Sato as Mac, Masayo Miyako as Sweet, Ai Matsubara as Prof, short for Professor, and Yoko Minamida as Auntie.
And a very good cat as Blanche.
So this movie takes place in Japan in the 1970s. Gorgeous, a high schooler, along with her friends, Kung Fu, Prof, Sweet, Fantasy, Mac, and Melody, are getting ready to enjoy their summer vacation. Gorgeous's mom passed away some years ago, and her father has brought home a new woman to be her mother. However, Gorgeous really isn't a fan of this decision and writes to her aunt in the countryside, asking if she and her friends can come visit. Her aunt accepts, and the 7 girls head over. And I'm sure they have a great time, right, Nico?
At first, yeah. It's nice enough. Things quickly devolve, though, and the girls begin to run into some strange things. Mac gets cheesed, and she disappears. And her floating head reappears and literally bites Gorgeous in the ass. It's kind of like if the floating sun from Mario was her face and it came down and just like fucked her up. It's kind of like that, actually. But as it turns out, Gorgeous's aunt in reality died a long time ago, and her body / her spirit has remained and now eats unmarried young women. And guess what? If you thought the house was possessed and wants to eat the girls, you are 100% correct. One by one, the girls get possessed or killed or both. In fact, Melody gets eaten by a piano in a particularly musical scene. Sweet is eaten by a clock and has the time of her life. And Kung Fu gets killed by a chandelier as she is literally putting fisticuffs to the furniture, fighting the house. But eventually, all the girls are killed, with the exception of Gorgeous, although she is, like, fully possessed. But hey, Dan, how's this crazy movie end?
Well, the next day, Gorgeous's father's fiance shows up to the small town. She bypasses Gorgeous's teacher, who was meant to chaperone the girls, but showed up late and has now turned into a giant pile of bananas.
I forgot about that.
And she meets up with Gorgeous. They have a short conversation where Gorgeous states that her friends will wake up soon and they will be hungry. Her eyes glow green and she sets her father's fiance literally on fire. The
What
end.
a fucking synopsis.
Well, that sounds like a movie. But I think we should break it down by the specifics, shall we? So, to start off with, how does this movie look to you, Dan?
Well, first I want to also briefly mention that our synopsis does not at all do this movie justice.
Not even
to
remotely.
what happens in this movie. The wildest, this movie left me speechless at just the wild shit that happens. So visually, I don't even know, man. There's a lot of just like crazy special effects. One girl gets dissolved in water, except it like sounds scary, but it's like not. It's like very like lo-fi. There's a lot of like weird stuff when Melody's getting eaten by the piano. There's just like this like flashing border, a lot of like add-on effects. A lot of the backdrops are painted, which actually looks kind of cool, like the drawn painted kind of stuff, and very obviously so too. I don't even know. Like there's so much visual eye candy going on, and not eye candy as in wow, this looks amazing, but just like wow, what the fuck is happening? It's nuts.
For me, one thing that I definitely it like jumped out to me is this movie is filled to the brim with gags,
Yeah.
both audio and visual gags. Like visually, there's so much happening in this movie. I guarantee you, if I sat down and watched it again, I'd probably pick up on more shit that I didn't
Oh,
pick
yeah,
up
I'm
on the
sure.
first time. Like, there's this one dude who he's like a watermelon vendor, and this guy shows up, and then he's like, "Do you like watermelons?" And he's like, "No." The guy's like, "Oh, wait, what? You don't like watermelons?" He's like, "No, I like bananas." And then like the watermelon guy just like insta dies,
Bananas!
and then the guy who liked bananas turns into a pile of bananas. Which this movie is literally bananas.
God.
But it's, I don't know, I can't describe it, but I will say this movie, it doesn't attempt to take itself seriously when it comes to the visual effects at all.
Which, like, thank fucking God.
Yeah.
I know. So instead, they just went with like something really over the top and like super goofy. I mean, there's a scene where like they do a little bit of what is almost reminiscent of like glitch hop with the cat
Yo.
jumping off of a piano, and they're like meow 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 meow, and like the cat's like going up and down and back and forth. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck is going on? Like, in a lot of ways, I feel like visually some of the editing techniques and stuff were a little bit ahead of the time, because you could see that shit like not everything, but small pieces of what happens in this movie might happen in another movie. But Nico, what do you think about the visuals?
I definitely agree with both of you, but I also think that the editing style was very surreal, and you've both kind of touched on this, but the way that this movie is cut, especially the first third, I think when they're experimenting with sort of like different drops into the shots from multiple frames sort of intersecting at once, it's a very weird thing to describe, but it's almost like there is a double exposure kind of thing, and the shots sort of like bleed together in some places. And I thought that was wicked fucking cool. I had to rewind a few times just to fully understand what was happening. And it's like, that's, all right, cool. Yeah, okay, I'm with it.
And one thing too that I just thought about is I was trying to put my finger on it the whole time I watched the movie, but this very much reminds me of a cartoon.
Yep.
And there's like a lot of scenes where instead of like zooming in on something, like the whole screen goes black except for that little circle of what's important. I used to see that in like old cartoons back when I was
like
you know, a
Acme
little kid,
cartoons and shit, Looney Tunes.
Exactly. And there's a lot of visual effects that are similar to that, like a live action version of that, of the Acme kind of cartoons. And same thing with audio gags and things like Justin had kind of mentioned.
It's really fitting that you said that, because like the entire time I was watching this, I was thinking that this is like if fucking Ed, Ed and Eddie got dipped into some weird J horror comedy that was written by just a bunch of mad lads or something.
Yeah.
God.
And I feel like it's kind of similar to the audio. There's just so much packed in. There's so much going on. There is a theme that runs through the movie. It's like almost like the theme of the house. Melody plays it a bunch. It just keeps going over and over again. But, you know, I think everyone has something they can take from it in terms of the sound. And Dan, you particularly like the Doors, right? The Doors made a sound you really like.
So for whatever reason, whenever they open or close a door, instead of just the standard like door creaking sound, they overlay also like a girl moaning.
Oh no.
So
I
like the
forgot
door will
about
close
that.
and it's like a moan. And that's fucking weird. And the soundtrack is just so out there. It's like some songs are like British Invasion kind of.
Yeah.
They have like crazy like jazz. Sometimes I'll feel like I'm watching like Cowboy Bebop with that kind of like
actually.
soundtrack. But over like a horror movie, and it's really weird. The house theme that Justin mentioned is very, very reminiscent of
Welcome to the Black Parade.
well the piano, yes, when they played on piano, definitely. But of Pomp and Circumstance, you know, the graduation theme. So like you're just watching this horror movie with all these like comedy gags and stuff while basically Pomp and Circumstance is playing, and it's fucking weird.
It felt like a shit post. almost.
Yes.
Like, it seriously
Yeah.
felt like a shit post, particularly because that particular piano part, I said particular a lot there. That one part where the piano is playing the house theme, it is so ever present in the movie. And every time it hits, the
Mhm.
song is in G major and it starts with that high G up there on the piano. And
Yep.
every fucking
The
time it
Black
hit, I heard,
Parade.
when I was a young boy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Just fucking automatically.
And then Justin also mentioned visually, they have the part where like the cat sort of like glitches. There's like a bunch of like memes and shit like this now where something will happen in a video, then people like cut that video up and like make it into a song, or like they take like the sound of whatever's happening and pitch
Like,
it
kinda
differently
chop it
and
and screw it, yeah.
Like, what is it? These, like, there's this one where, like, they do Tears Don't Fall by Bullet, but it's like a bunch of farm animals or a bunch of
Yeah.
animals.
yeah. So you know, whenever they cut to that, like the video cuts along with that audio for there, that's what happened with the cat. So they take that Black Parade Pomp and Circumstance melody, except it's a fucking cat meowing, and you see the visual of the cat like in various stages of jumping on or off the piano depending on whatever note the cat is meowing. Bro, it is fucking nuts. That was, I don't know, that was one of my favorite parts.
Hearing you describe that sounds like some sort of weird fucking scheme Justin do to try and troll us.
No, listen.
Doesn't it?
On top of that as well. So oftentimes they'll do like really close, sometimes there's like a transition effect where the lens view will grow more and more narrow until it grows like circles it on like one thing and then it'll close. And that's just transition to another scene. So they wouldn't transition to another scene. Sometimes like they'll be like, oh, Gorgeous is lonely. And then boom, the camera just like zooms in on Gorgeous real quick. And she's in like a really like cropped close up. And then like one time it was just like some random shit like that would happen. And then also they would do like really fast speed ups. They would experiment with like speeding up scenes. So the teacher who's supposed to like come watch them as a chaperone, they like speed it up. His ass gets stuck in a bucket. He falls down steps. He like rolls in and out of the street. And then a kid gets like drumsticks and like is banging on his fucking the bucket on his ass as he's calling and explaining to them why he's going to be late.
What is just this like, what fucking the fuck? Movie?
It's fucking nuts, bro. This movie is absolutely nuts. But,
oh my God.
You know, obviously we're a horror podcast and we wouldn't be watching this movie if it wasn't in some way horror adjacent. So, I mean, this one's for the room here. What kind of horror is this? Like, what is this?
I don't know. I don't even know that I can consider this horror. I feel like it's not horror until the very end. Because even earlier on, when like one or two people get killed, there's just so much other weird cartoony shit that's happening. Like the ass bucket scene that like...
It's like an episode of Flapjack, if you've ever seen that show.
Yeah. It's just so out there and just so discombobulating that I feel like I can't call it a horror movie. I don't know. I mean, it is. I guess it is. So I can call it that, I guess. But I don't fucking know, man.
I feel like it is just so fucking out there and avant-garde. Like I said, the best thing I can describe it to in modern terms is it's like a shit post. But I also think that this was something where they were, clearly trying to be experimental. There's nothing about this that's mainstream, even among, I think, J-horror, arguably, except for like the inclusion of, like yurei and stuff like that. But aside from that, I can't, find necessarily too many threads between this and other films that we've watched in the same vein.
So not really films, but I've spent an inordinate amount of time watching Japanese commercials.
Japanese commercials are fucking nuts, dude.
Yeah, and so is this movie.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I see, if anything, like, I feel like this movie doesn't really fall into that kind of wellspring that we know in modern times as, J-horror, right? Like, this movie doesn't really match up with those things so much. But I do actually find a lot of this, like, things that happen in this movie. And again, like, not like I'm saying Japanese commercial has people fucking, like, getting eaten by clocks. but I'm saying the level of like ludicrousness and even like some of the gags in this, like I've seen in commercials, or very similar things I've seen in commercials. So it's kind of, again, like it's just really weird. And I think a lot of it really, as a lot of things in movies do, has to do with the director,
Mm-hmm.
because he was one of those guys. I mean, like I was reading through his Wikipedia page. He had done a lot, especially when you consider how early on in post-war, you know, like the Japanese film industry after World War II, which he fought in.
Right.
And he has like a lot of strong anti-war messages in his movies. This one has like a slight one, but he would, in other movies that he has, he did a lot of anti-war shit. And actually, kind of weird enough, but there's this anime, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and he actually directed the live action version of that back in the 80s. So he also deals with a lot of themes of like coming of age movies. He actually has a trilogy that he's really well known for. And it's interesting because this movie also is like, his movie's kind of almost like a gag on everything. Like he obviously has a lot to say about coming of age and stuff like that. But then like this movie is like, it's like, yeah, like we're about to enter adulthood.
My name's
like,
Mac, because I eat a lot.
yeah. And it's just like, all right, I get you. And I feel like even that,
My name's Gorgeous, because I'm gorgeous. I'm prof, because I have glasses.
Yeah. and I feel like even those are like him making fun of stereotypes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, people would call people that, I guess, maybe sometimes, I don't know. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's definitely like wild, like completely wild. But yeah, in terms of movie relations, I don't really know too much. And I guess, do I consider this to be horror? Yeah, I do. I consider it to be kind of like art house horror,
Yeah.
for a lack of a better word.
Okay, yeah.
I think, and so this is going to sound kind of weird, but I have a very particular liking for, remember Housewife?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how that one was just like an acid trip at times?
It also had house in the title.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
And this one is also like an acid trip at times, but instead of going like more dark, it actually has comedy in it, which I think is somewhat necessary just because the cast is meant to be like schoolgirls. So
Most of them didn't have acting experience either. Only a few of them did.
no,
Right.
yeah. So I think that's also like, you know, part of it. Now, does anyone have a favorite character? And don't say it all at once because I know what we're all gonna say. So really, I guess I should be asking, who is the best character in this?
It's Kung Fu.
Kung Fu, hands down.
It's Kung Fu.
She was a badass.
What's your favorite Kung Fu scene?
Fuck, all of them? I don't know. whenever she fights something, because they do like the classic like quick cuts, quick film cuts, like wah cha 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 kind of stuff. And then also I love the
theme
at the end. Well, the theme too,
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm like at the end when she like gets killed, I was so mad.
Yeah.
But she literally like jumps through the air and she like her head gets stuck in a chandelier and she's getting like
Yeah.
electrocuted. And then also her friends are like,
You can do
fight
it.
through, you can win. I'm like, wait, she's getting electrocuted. Like you don't have a choice.
No, I don't think she can at this
But
point.
regardless, somehow she gets dismembered, I guess. And then a minute later, her disembodied legs just fly out of the chandelier and like kung fu kick the wall. And I was like, what the fuck?
That was some real shit. She came back from the dead with the assist.
Yeah, she did.
I also like the part where it's not as wacky as that, but like they were trying to get through some part of the house and she literally just like Chun-Li kicks the shit out of the wall and goes into the other room. It's fucking incredible. And now you know why her name is Kung Fu.
Yep.
See, Kung Fu is probably my favorite character, but I'm just gonna give like a quick moment of shine to Mac. And so Mac is called Mac, which I'm assuming is a play on McDonald's or Big Mac.
I was thinking like mac and cheese.
No, it's not.
It's
No.
mac and cheese. What
It's
is it?
Stomach.
Oh,
Really?
Wow.
They even say it in the movie.
Damn, I didn't
Huh.
catch that.
Short for stomach.
I must have
Mac,
missed that.
stomach.
Well, stomach. But yeah, so
That's like
I feel
shortening Matthew to Thew.
Yeah.
That's fucking
Doesn't make that
dumb.
much sense, but whatever.
but I don't know. But I guess like, so Mac is like always eating. And I find it to be hilarious because they're like with Mac, like, oh, like you're so round or like, da da. But Mac visually doesn't really look different from the other
No,
characters.
she doesn't.
Like Mac is not like significantly fatter than anyone else in the movie,
just looks
which I always found to be hilarious.
like a regular
She looks
person.
she looks like a regular person. And just like, it's just funny to me because it's like, oh, Mac, you're always eating food. And like, Mac is pulling food out of nowhere. Like, Mac's on a train, like munching on like a baguette, and then they'll transition, and like Mac has like a sandwich now. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? And Mac just reminded me of, if you ever seen like the old Popeye movies, like there's this dude called Hamburger.
Yeah.
And Hamburger just like is constantly eating hamburgers, and he's always like, I would give you $1 today for a hamburger tomorrow, or some shit he's always saying. And I'm like, bruh, she reminds me of that, to be honest.
It also
like,
reminds me of one of those like classic just visual gags where everyone keeps the same costume or, you know, outfit for the entire film except one person who's in like a different shirt or different outfit, like literally every scene.
Oh, like in Llamageddon.
Yeah.
Llamageddon.
Yeah.
So this review probably seems like a little less structured than our regular show, because this movie, it's like you start and you feel like you understand, and then like an hour later you're just like, I don't understand anymore.
As soon as you think this movie can't get any weirder than what you just watched,
Yeah,
it gets
it does.
weirder.
It's so much so that like the movie ending kind of took me by surprise almost, just because I was already so caught off guard with literally the rest of the movie.
So Fantasy is like crushing on their teacher, and she's like, oh, like she has like dreams of him like taking her away on like a white horse and shit. So that's her defining characteristic, though, is she's always like thinking of fantasies. Okay, cool. So oftentimes with her, you get Prof, who's like a really smart chick, and her thing is like she wears glasses and she can't see without them. So how she die? Well, her glasses like fly off her face and she falls into like
I can't
blood.
see without my glasses.
But what makes it funnier is it was like a piggy bank that like attacked her and dragged her down into the blood.
Yeah.
But the piggy bank pops up a couple times wearing her glasses.
That was some troll shit.
And I was like, yo, what happened? The end of this movie, I felt like, I don't know. I was like, you know what? I've accepted it now. Like anything can happen. So like when, you know, Gorgeous's dad's fiance rolls up and there's just like a stack of bananas in a car and she just like walks past it. I'm like, yeah, makes sense. Like, whatever.
So one thing too that I was reading that's going to make this make a lot of sense
Okay.
is that a lot of this movie was actually inspired by the director's daughter. And a lot of the kills and everything, for instance, the mattress kill when Mac gets her head in the well, the piano, the mirror, things like that, they were directly inspired by his 12-year-old daughter. So like, you know, when we talk about like cartoony kills, the wacky kind of shit, like it's literally like a 12-year-old coming up with this kind of shit.
It is very childlike now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Was it like things where she had, you know, she was a scamp and she got caught in a piano, or she do now? Like if there's any specific sort of, you know, reference to it?
No, not like an event that happened or anything, but she thought of some of these things. Like she told him that she was always scared of like the mirror eating her. So he like kind of turned that into like a thing in the movie. So it's almost like out of the imagination of a 10 or 12-year-old, you know?
That's sick.
So one thing that's interesting, and as we're talking about this before, I kind of sort of feel like this movie is that kind of really weird balance almost of childishness almost. And then also just some unexplainable shit. And I love how, so at one point in time, they're like stuck in the house and they can't get out. And like the house immediately like closes up and shuts up everything and everything. It just completely closes up. And then the house itself starts attacking them. And you're like, okay, it's like when your mind tries to focus on something, it's like, this happens, and then this happens. Okay, cool. Now they're fighting off the house. Except, wait a second. Gorgeous's ghost head shows up, and she's in an alternate reality or an alternate dimension. And she's like, I'm talking to you from my aunt's dimension. I'm like, what is going on?
I didn't even know she had a dimension.
Some of the things that I read hinted or said that this was kind of intentional. But, Dan, I know you probably have some trivia, and I don't want to step on toes here. So tell us some trivia about this movie, because I know there's a lot.
So I unfortunately read this piece of trivia at the very beginning of the movie, and it set the wrong expectation. So apparently this movie was inspired by the success of Jaws.
Makes sense.
And the studio Toho commissioned this movie to be made, and it was supposed to be designed to be sort of their domestic reflection of successful Western films of horror genre. So I knew this wasn't like a shark movie, but I was going into this thinking this was going to be similar tone, and it could not be farther from the truth. So that definitely caught me off guard. I don't really know how Toho was like, hey, you should make a movie like Jaws. And director was like, all right, bet, say less, fam.
God, what a fucking terrible instance of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. But Justin, I want to get your take on this one.
Hit me.
So strap in.
Oh, yeah.
So apparently shortly after the film's release, and I'm reading this directly from IMDb here, Obayashi, who's the director, proposed a story for what would have been the 16th Godzilla film. Had that film been made, it would have used the same crew as this film and same music as well, or same person who did the music.
Okay.
I need this movie to exist.
The story told of a little girl named Momo who discovers the dead body of Godzilla.
Okay.
After being dissected, Godzilla is revealed to be a pregnant female alien named Roseanne, who died of diabetes.
Wait, who died of what?
Diabetes.
Yo, ayo, gimmick infringement.
What?
They can't do that.
The
Can't
brain
do
of
that.
the dead Roseanne instructs the humans that she must return with her unborn son to the planet of Godzilla, and so her body is converted into a spaceship.
What the fuck?
The newborn child would be reunited with its father, and they would have fought a female monster that shot fire from her breasts. Ultimately, however, this project was surprisingly discarded by Toho
Why? This movie whips ass.
and was instead released as a short story in the Japanese edition of Starlog magazine. The artwork was done by future Akira director Katsuhiro Otomo.
No shit.
Okay.
But I would have wished that Godzilla movie would have happened.
Oh my god, my kingdom for this movie.
So I only have one tiny thing to add.
Mm-hmm.
The director, you know, he's been asked about the incomprehensible nature of this film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's what he said. He said he recalled that his producer told him that Toho was tired of losing money on comprehensible films, and they were ready to let him direct the script,
These movies make too much sense. We can't have this.
which they felt was incomprehensible. Because there was a 2-year wait. He wrote the script and no one wanted to direct it. So he ended up directing it, and they were like, yeah, maybe, you know, we've tried movies that make sense and they don't work. So yeah, go for it.
What an absolutely wild premise.
Well, it kind of worked. I mean,
Yeah.
I never saw like the box office or numbers or anything, but I'm pretty sure it was a success in Japan.
Yeah. So this movie was actually a success. And it was, I guess they said it was very popular with a youth audience. I don't know how old that would go exactly, but
I bet teenagers.
it literally now has like a big cult following and everything else like that. And like, why? Why do you guys think it does have that cult following?
I can instantly see why. This is one of the few ones that we've seen on the podcast where I just instantly upon recognize like, oh, of course this has a huge following of people that are really devoted to this. I see why people talk about this now. If you haven't caught on by this point in the episode that this is truly one of the most absolutely buck wild movies we've reviewed here, like this is an experience almost akin to the way it might be for, you know, theater kids seeing Rocky Horror the first time, I would say.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. There was actually a reviewer back in the day who somewhat likened this movie to that. He said this movie's like a mix of like Rocky Horror and something else. And he was kind of disparaging about it, but it's interesting that you make that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cult classic just because of the absolutely wild shit.
Yeah.
There's no way that this movie would ever be a mainstream success, at least in America anyways, because I guess in
Right.
Japan it kind of was. But in the States, there wouldn't be. But
Yo, A24, do it. You won't.
But for sure, like I can for sure see the cult following because it's just wacky. It was so entertaining to watch. And yeah.
So for the what would you do here?
Oh boy.
First off, we all have to come up with a name for one another. So, and that's going to be your defining characteristic.
Oh no.
I already said mine.
So, what would yours be, Dan? What do you think yours would be?
Like I said at the beginning, I would be tall.
True.
Yeah, facts.
Nico, Dan, what are we thinking for Nico? Or Nico, what do you think about for yourself?
Loud.
I didn't think about that one. That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Or
And what am
sleepy.
I? What am I?
Bald.
Wow.
I mean, that's factual. You ain't lying.
Troll.
You ain't lying.
I would say troll.
Yeah.
So now, how does the house get us? How would the house? Because there's no escape. So how does the house get you, Dan? How do you think? What do you think would happen in this movie?
I think my head will come out and bite him in the ass first.
Probably.
Right after you died. So
Yeah.
Nico, you have to die first. So how
Naturally.
do you go?
I think that I am gonna be going into the fridge and I find just a pristine block of unopened Parmesan Reggiano cheese, and I'm just like,
Okay,
oh
okay.
fuck yeah, let me just take a bite out of this, like I do, instead of actually grating it sometimes because I'm a monster who has a problem, and my problem is my love for Parmesan Reggiano. But anyway, that's a whole nother podcast, folks. I think the fridge eats me.
Fair.
And then Kung Fu like beats the shit out of me while I'm inside the fridge.
That's fair. That's fair. So Dan, how do you go out?
Man, I don't know. I feel like my bed would eat me or some shit. I know that's
Yo.
not particularly related to like being tall, but I just feel like I would be eaten by a bed. Like between like the bed frame and the mattress, it would just like eat me or some shit. Like I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. That's very fair. I feel like what would happen is because Nico, I feel like that's a good play here on bald, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what could happen is I'd be taking like a shower or something, and then like the classic, like the long black hair. What it would do is it would position itself on my head, so I would start like shampooing my head, and all of a sudden
Oh,
there'd be like
no.
all this hair, and I'd be like, oh my god, and then it would like choke me out and take me out the game that way, bruh.
Yo.
That would probably be what happens to me if my code name was in fact bald. That would make sense. So all in all, yeah.
You're also haunting calls of would echo after your
Yes.
death throughout the house.
Yo, it's real. It's real. But now it's time for the realest statement of all. Audience, as you know, we do in fact have a running weekly tab of Is Justin going to show up in Nico's bathroom one night? And I mean, where we're at right now is, okay, thinking back to those words that I just said, perhaps what I meant to say was basement. Perhaps what I
Front
meant to say was
door.
washing machine and dryer. Wherever I am, that's where I am. All right. Just let me finish
My
taking a shower
God.
first. So whatever's going on is going on. But Nico, you can't get this right, because if you do, I show up in your dreams tonight.
Okay.
So
Oh, no. I actually believe that.
what do you guys think this movie got from critics on Rotten Tomatoes?
32.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna swing the opposite direction. I feel like this probably did better than I'm expecting it would. I'm gonna say 71.
So you're both fairly wrong, but Dan, you were more wrong. So Nico, I'll see you tonight, because
All right, I'll
this
get my
movie has a
game patch.
91% from
Wow.
critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
9-1, 9-1,
Okay.
fellas.
Damn.
The
I'm
audience coming
slightly
in,
more wrong.
the audience coming in a little less hot at 79, but
That's what I expected, audience. Yeah.
give me kind of like your general, just, thought on the movie and your score.
I'm gonna give it an 85. This is something that, as I was going into this, I had absolutely no fucking idea what I was going to give. But this is a truly wild ride from start to finish. At times, it's reminiscent of Rick and Morty. At times, it's reminiscent of Ed, Edd and Eddy. At times, it is just, well, it's insane. It's insane. It's just absolutely insane. And that's what I'm giving it.
Fair. Dan, where you at?
I'm going to say 84.
Mm.
I had a lot of fun watching this movie because it's just so fucking nuts. And there's just so many times where I had to like rewind for a second and be like, wait, what, did I really just see what I think I saw? And it was just a blast to watch. And as weird as it was, I can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah, actually.
So I'm very much aligned with you guys on this one. So I'm going to give this one a 90. And I feel like movies like this are why I enjoy doing the podcast. We see a lot of movies when we do this, probably more horror movies than we have any right to be watching. And there are so many similarities in movies. And I feel like this movie is like the ultimate palate cleanser. I couldn't predict anything in this movie.
Yeah.
I sincerely couldn't. And like, there's just so much happening in this movie where I'm like, yo, this is insane. This is nuts. This is crazy. And I love it for that. I love it for the creativity, the everything they do. Like, this is like not shitty at all. This is really good. Really, really good. Dan mentioned this, Nico, but I'll say it on the pod because I think it's very true. If we could have gone back in time and scheduled this for like a time where like the three of us could have watched it together,
That would have been nuts.
like that would have been nuts. We would have been, we would have been hype. That would have been an hour and a half of straight
My
jokes.
God. Yeah.
Cause like we had fun watching fucking Zombies,
Aquarium of
together.
the Damned or whatever.
Aquarium of the Dead.
of the
Dead,
Dead.
yeah.
Yeah.
Shit. So imagine how much fun we would have
Dude.
had with this. But yeah, 90's where I'm at with this. So it's time to put all our chips on the table here. Do we recommend this one to the audience?
Yeah.
Strap
Yeah.
in, but yeah.
Yeah.
I would
do.
recommend
I
this
do.
even to someone who is not into horror. Like, I know we're a horror podcast, but
Yeah.
I just think motherfuckers should watch this movie.
It's an
Yeah.
experience that should be
Yeah,
had.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was stunned by the fact that this is in the Criterion collection because I didn't call that at all. And like, we just watched The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is also in the Criterion collection, I think, or one of those big kind of fancy collections. And so
Almost positive, yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. So it's like a well-respected place for well-respected films. And it's like Hausu. And I'm like, hang on, what? And so, yeah, this movie is just fucking bonkers. And I cannot say that enough. I do recommend it. Now, I'm assuming, well, maybe I shouldn't assume, but would you give this the Golden Seal?
I think this is the best horror comedy we're ever going to see on the podcast. I'm just going to make that statement now and wait to be proven wrong. So I'm going to give it the Golden Seal.
You're probably right. I don't know, man.
Dan, you had the lowest score out of everyone.
I
Would you
know.
really give an 84 to a Golden Seal? Is the economy that bad that we've devalued your ratings now?
See, I want it to be like so bad. I want it to be magical, but it's not bad.
It's
not
not
bad.
bad. Yeah.
It's just
This
magical.
movie's just a fucking acid trip.
Yeah.
I want it to be a diamond in the rough, but it's not really all that in the rough.
It's
No.
actually like really creative. Yeah.
But yeah, fuck it. Golden Seal. It's an 84, but it's a Golden Seal.
I was gonna give it a Golden Seal
Yeah.
too.
Wow.
Hang on a
Wow.
second. Hang on a
I did
second.
not expect that to
Not
happen.
even remotely.
Hang on. All right.
Bro, you took that long to
To
find your hand.
I had to get the stamp.
That was your
So-
hand.
Don't worry. Nah, it was a stamp, bro. So
To listeners on the podcast, that was a stamp.
One-
For real.
yeah,
sure.
totally.
yeah. So this one somehow got the Golden Seal of approval from us here on Don't Open That Door. So yeah, definitely check it out. Hausu from 1977, known as House in the English release. Well worth your time. Watch it with a friend. Watch it by yourself. Just don't watch it if you're having some kind of existential crisis, because I don't know how this will make you feel. So, yeah, but if you like what you've heard, or if you want to comment, let us know. Maybe you've seen this movie. Maybe you have a better horror comedy for Nico. Who knows? Drop us a line. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. That's Don't Open That Door. Plus, you can check out every episode we've done on our website. That's, of course, dotdhorror.com. And if you like our show, give us a good review wherever you're listening. But till next time, take care of yourselves. Look out for one another. And as always, dear listener,
Meow.
don't open that door. Bye.
Meow, meow, meow.